Hello, hello, everyone. I am finally back, and I am back with an It Welcome to Derry review, or just an overall It review when it comes to the Hanlon family. That is what we're going to focus on today, because I have some very strong opinions on the matter, but I will start off with the positives of what I loved about the TV show. But I really mostly have a gripe with the movies, the 2017 and 2019 films, because those films set up Welcome to Derry. And rather than sticking to the novel, of course, they did their own spin on this Black family, which really, really upsets me because the changes were so unnecessary and exposes a lot about Hollywood in regards to how they like to portray or skim on Black characters. But I'm going to start on a positive note, and I will start off by saying how much I love this novel. I love Stephen King's It. I read it for the first time when I was in high school because I was just curious. And honestly, anything dealing with children or childhood trauma and using that as a metaphor in a novel has always intrigued me. And that is really what this novel is about. That is literally what the entity, is all about for these kids. It really is a metaphor for the childhood trauma, which is why all of the kids, except for Mike, yes, we are going to get into that, have really difficult home lives, and how all of the adults don't really care what's going on with them. The apathy that is expressed. And of course, the entity, is the cause of all of this. But like I said, this is a metaphor. And the one thing that I think frustrates me about the way that this story is told through film and television is that even though we know the seriousness of this, it's still being told almost like in a childlike way, almost like it's being geared towards children. And this is not a children's story, and this is not a children's book at all. Okay. It's definitely not a children's book. It's not. It really is about, like I said, the childhood trauma, but not only that, the escaping of the childhood trauma. The losers leave Derry, but there's something still pulling them back. And it really is a matter of, no matter how far away you run away from home, no matter how much you try to run away from that trauma, you are always going to have to go back to square one. You are always going to have to go back home for various reasons. And the true reason why you should is so that you can heal those fears, you can heal those traumas, because you can't avoid it, and it will literally chase you down like the plague. So this is a really, really special book, and it's a really, really special message. So of course, I naturally got frustrated with the childlike nature of the films and the show. I've learned to accept it to a certain degree, but it is what it is. So those are some of my positive thoughts about how much I love this novel. And I will start off with the positives on what I liked about the show, Welcome to Derry. The kids were a great part of this. The kids are always a great part of this. And I am seeing a lot of criticism from grown adults about the acting, probably because we're all just chronically online. But I think we all need to take a step back, touch some grass, and remind ourselves that these are children and they're allowed to grow. They're allowed to get better. This is probably for most of them their first like real role. And they're allowed to not be so great and get better. But I think that they all did great. I think for children, for the youth, especially in today's world, I think that they did good. I obviously have my favorites. Shout out to Ronnie. But I think the kids were such a great aspect of all of this. They always are, even in the films, because the kids are really what saved the films for me. Um, I love the addition of Dick Halloran and the Shining spinoff. People are wanting him to have a spinoff off of this, which I am against because it's just too much spinoff after spinoff. And it really boils down to these people wanting money, being, the creators, the producers and all of that. They would just want more money if they were to do a spinoff of Dick Halloran. And it's not to say that I wouldn't watch it and that it wouldn't probably be good, because his story is probably one of the most interesting from this season. But just please leave it where it's at. I'd rather them just do something that's strictly about The Shining versus them trying to attach this to it. And, everybody's talking about the Stephen King, multi-universe and all of that. Like, I understand the excitement. I do. But like, let's calm down. Let things breathe. Let things do what they do. What else did I love? Of course, I just love the overall blackness. I did love the overall blackness of this, but I'm not a fool. I'm very aware that they probably did this intentionally, starting off with the family of the Hanlons for multiple reasons. The main one being that Black people, we naturally, if we're talking about this, other people are going to start talking about it. We are natural trendsetters. We are all up and down social media talking about something. And if we just make a few people laugh or interested because we tend to come together during these moments when we're watching the same thing, we just create this party, exciting atmosphere around us whenever we want to watch something, and that will just naturally draw in other people because naturally people will be nosy and be like, oh, what they doing over there? So I think that was a main factor in why they focused on the Hanlons. But also, I think a part of them knows that they messed up Hanlon's story. Yes, yes. This is going to be slightly a hater-esque video, but can you blame me? Can you blame me? No, of course you can't. They made a lot of unnecessary changes, and I think that's why they're trying to, almost in their own weird way, make up for it in this, despite the fact that they made some other serious changes that still don't make sense to any of us who read the novel. But they did have to connect the Hanlon family to the Native Americans because, unlike what the first movie shows you, because they really do not flesh out Mike in part one, the 2017 film. They don't flesh it out whatsoever, and it pisses me off because he is the true anchor in all of this. He is the one that, or lifeboat. He's the one that brings everybody back. He's the only one that stays behind, and him staying behind makes sense, which we're going to get into. And he is the true historian. I know in part one they made Ben Hanscom. Am I saying his name right? I'll put it here. Y'all know how I do. They make him kind of the historian in the part one. They make him look at the history of Derry and the library, and that's not his role. His role is him building the clubhouse and being the architect that he's going to become when he's an adult. Like, that's his main role. Mike is the one that is the true historian. His family is the one, because this is actually true, like they show in Derry, his family is the one that is really connected and understands that there's something wrong with Derry. Nobody else does. So yeah, I think I said what I like about this. It was pretty. Oh, I love the storytelling, of course, and some of the surprises like Ingrid and all that. It's interesting. The Bob Gray thing is very, very interesting to me as well, because I do like, I think it's creepy when you go back into those times. Like, horror becomes more and more terrifying when you go into other centuries, or like later when you go deeper and deeper into history and the times like 1908. Shout out to the case. Ski wee. 1908 is just such a creepy time to me, and the way that the clown was dressed and how the clowns were just so much more creepier than what you see now. But it was supposed to be this thing that excited the kids, combined with the type of music that they listen to. Like, that's real horror to me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing seasons 2 and 3 and how they're going to do that. I just really hope they chill out with the CGI. I really need these people to know that you're wasting time using CGI. Majority of us don't like it. It cheapens everything. And you can give more jobs out, which I'm pretty sure that's what you don't want. You can give out more jobs to people if you just go back to doing things low-key the way that they were done. It's it would have been way more scary. Like that scene where the kids are floating in the air and he's playing his instrument and they're all like single file line in the deadlights. Imagine how creepy that would have been without CGI. Imagine all the colors and the darkness that would come with seeing something that actually looks real, seeing real looking children floating in the air. Like, you know, they could do so much better, and they know it, but capitalism has its purpose, right? Now that I've said the things that I liked and expressed my passion for this novel, we're going to get into why I'm so irritated with the changes they made to the Hanlons and why they just didn't need to do that to begin with. So first things first, Leroy is not in the novel. Okay? There are no grandparents that I can recall, but definitely when it comes to the Hanlons, there are no grandparents. There's no Leroy. There is no Leroy in this, okay? There is only Will, who you see in the Welcome to Derry as a child. Will, Mike's father, who's still alive in the novel. He doesn't die by fire. I know, yeah, he doesn't die by a fire. Will, Mike, and his mother. Those are the Black people in this novel, and they're a very down to earth farmer family that live like either right next to Derry or like really just outside of Derry. Like I'm talking just a bike ride away. So he's not even like in Derry. Like he is, but not really. He's far off in the distance. He doesn't even go to school with them because the movies do a time shift. They make it so that the losers are going against it in the 80s, but no. The original novel, The Losers, it's set in the late 50s, early 60s. I'm pretty sure that it's still like late 50s. Like they haven't entered the 60s. Yes, at the roaring 60s. What? They haven't reached officially the 60s yet, I don't think. I got to look at that again, but it's definitely given high key 50s vibes, kind of like how you see in the show. You see Lily with her cute little 50s hair. They're still playing some type of a doo-woppy-esque music. And I had to point that out because I really do enjoy when movies and shows get it right, when they get that transition right. It doesn't just become 1960 and everybody starts wearing psychedelic patterns and like that's not how it happens. It's always a slow move into the next decade or the next trend. And you see that obviously in real life, not as much clearly because of social media. We're way too connected. But before, it's normal to see people still dress like 2010s and we're like in 2020 like that. It takes time. But yeah, that's when it's originally set. And they are on a farm, like I said, and they're Black farmers, which is super important. And the Bowers, they are also farmers. And that rivalry, racism aside, because that's what it's really about. That's where it starts. It's about farming. And I don't remember what Henry Bowers' father did to the Hanlons' crops or whatever. They did something to where they took them to court and actually won. So that really destroyed the Bowers situation financially and cause Henry Bowers to hate them even more. There's even a part or a scene in the novel where he actually unalives their dog, just calls it an N-word dog, like just real sick, sinister stuff. But I like that because that was what was happening in real life. And that's so important to me. Stephen King is a white man, a white male author, and he wrote this intentionally because just like everybody else with a brain in America, you're not a fool. You know that that's how it was. In fact, there were even worse things that were done. So he's playing it cute with the slurs and just the unaliving of the dog and all of that. Like we know as Black Americans, especially how bad it was. Okay. Some of those people are still alive today. My grandmother was alive during Jim Crow. She's still here. She's chilling in a nursing home. So yeah, before I go off tangent, because I'm going to get into that. But yeah, that is the first thing. They are farmers, nothing with military, nothing with cops. The second thing that I really want to dive into that they do not display in the movies is that Will and Mike, or Mike and his father, are really close. They have a very loving relationship. In fact, Mike is the only child out of all of the losers who actually has a loving and kind, calm home. Bill also had that before Georgie passed away or got killed by the entity. So Bill he had a similar thing. He had a similar situation, which is funny because you would think that Bill and Mike would be even closer than what they are. I mean, they're all close, but like they would have that real true understanding of what family feels like. But that obviously all changes when Georgie dies and then they just become terrible parents. So Mike is the only one that really has a true connection with his family and his happiness is there, which makes sense because he's a Black man or a Black boy in this time. And that's all you had. I mean, it's kind of still all people have. It's all we have is each other. But that was all that they really had. Like you didn't have anybody else except for somebody else who was probably Black and they might look out for you. But there's some things just so sweet and gentle about their relationship. And I bring up their closeness for a very specific reason because it's really, really important to the story. Now, Something that really, really bothers me when I talk about this and when I talk about Black characters being portrayed terribly, especially when it comes to a novel, when you have a playbook right there, something that really, really irritates me is when people say that, oh, well, they skimmed on his story because they were probably trying to save money in post. I'm not trying to hear that. I'm really not trying to hear that, because I can tell you right now, I could have done without all of the other ones. They spent so much money on a mummy that barely looked like a mummy, on a leopard that barely looked like the CGI is so bad, right? That's where all their money is going. And then they skimp on it so that so they can show something that didn't actually happen in the novels, a burning door with hands spilling out. Weak. Weak. Okay. The best one honestly was Beverly. And quite frankly, in the novel, hers is kind of the best too, not just because I'm a woman, but yeah. So I'm not going for that they were saving money angle. That is not what was happening. I think it was just a little discriminatory, because this is really, really important. Because so like I said earlier in this video, Will's family is like they're the true historians. And it's because Mike. I keep getting them mixed up. Whatever. Mike's father he saw it. He saw it. So you know how you see it, Welcome to Derry, the black spot. That's one of the big major events that happens in the novel as they're going through time and talking about the major events of the 27-year cycle. That's one of them. So that does happen, but it happens in the 30s. Will is in the black spot, but he's not a child. He's an adult. And he's a veteran. This is like during the wars and whatever. So they're partying and all of that. And then somebody sets the place on fire because of racism, but not everybody dies in the fire. Some people actually escape. A few people escape, including Will. See, he doesn't die in a fire. And as he's escaping, he looks out and he sees this giant bird-like entity, which is it, scooping up and just eating the few people that are like running off and trying to get out of the fire's way and all of that. And he witnesses this and he makes eye contact with it as a bird and remembers this. And because he tells Mike this story when Mike is a grown man. Okay. So this is so important because Mike's actual encounter with it for the first time was not that door with the hands spilling out from the fire. His first story came with the bird, the same exact bird that his father saw years prior. Okay. And this is the kicker. Mike, when he experiences this as a child, doesn't even know that his father encountered this, because in the novel, his father is always telling him scary stories about the ironworks kitcheners and all of the things that happened that are a direct result of it. He tells him all these stories and he's so interested, but every single time he's about to tell him the story about the black spot, his mother is like, no. She always cuts it off and she's like, we're not having it. So when he's on his deathbed in the hospital and Mike is caring for him and talking to him, he finally tells him the story. And it like really clicks for Mike and kind of freaks him out because he had the same exact experience when he's a child. That's his encounter. And it's when he was off into the distance, just screwing around and came across, I don't know what it was, but he was near the ironworks and he went a little further than what he was supposed to because his father told him, he was like, you got to stop at this location. He didn't listen and he ends up experiencing the bird who's trying to like attack him and eat him like this it's crazy. So he didn't even know that, but I thought that was like such a beautiful detail because it shows how much him and his father are alike and how they share similar fears. And it was just beautiful. And you don't see that in the films, and you certainly don't see it in the TV show because they're essentially estranged in the TV show because his dad is a military man. He's a military brat. And, they tied it with the sweet bow in the show with him saying he loves him and all of that. I did like that. But none of that had to happen had they just stuck with the original. Like, I cannot believe that. And I bet you they're going to use that bird thing for something else that's not even related to the Hanlons, but whatever. Something else that really bothers me, which I pretty much already touched on literally a few minutes ago, I'm pretty sure, was that Mike was the true historian. He's the one with all of this information for the very reasons that I just stated. So it just didn't make sense for them to just minimize his character in the way that they did, because it's a significant minimization. With that being said, I'm going to quickly express my opinions on why I think they decided to go this direction. It's very lazy. The reasonings being the blatant racism, and I think I touched on how important expressing this is. It's important. You got to stay true to how things actually were. Even though this is a made up story, the time frame, or the 50s aren't made up. The 40s aren't made up. Jim Crow isn't made up. These things were actually happening. And if we are basing the story around some level of truth, some level of reality, racism is a part of that reality. And it's actually so crucial because it feeds on fear. And what's more scary than blatant racism, especially Jim Crow era where people were being hung from trees? Sorry if it looks a little different. Of course, my camera shut off. It wouldn't be a Shannon video if the camera didn't shut off. Would it? No. I think the last thing I was saying was the significance of telling the truth in regards to bigotry, discrimination, racism when it comes to shows and movies and all of that, especially if it was a part of a novel that they're trying to recreate in a film format. There was no reason, I think that was one of the main reasons why they chose to set the films in the 80s. They didn't want to address all of the racism that Stephen King was not afraid to address in his novel. The slurs, the black spot, which is the irony of that, because they end up having to cover that in Welcome to Derry anyway. Okay. So for them to do that in the original films was just completely pointless, in my opinion. Even though I think my opinion is right. And I know why they did that. It's all about comfort. It's all about wanting to run away from the truth of those times. And I don't respect it. I don't respect Hollywood right now. And and it's crazy I'm saying that. But in 2025, Hollywood is a coward, more of a coward than they were back in the day. Like, that's crazy to me. I feel like I can't even think of them right now, but there are other films where Hollywood was not afraid to come for your juggler, was not afraid to get to the root of the issue and say whatever. And now it's this whole, well, it's going to make people uncomfortable. And I'm just like, well, if they are a person who actually read the novel like myself, they're kind of expecting this, because that's what I was. And if they did read the novel and they were expecting it and it didn't show up and they're like, oh, sigh of relief. Well, I know what you are. I know what you are. But it seems to me that they are catering to a wider audience versus who it's actually for. And not everybody is a horror person. And I know that you're trying to create more horror fans, but for what? It's all about greed at the end of the day. We don't need billions of people coming to the theater and billions of people watching Welcome to Derry, So this whole, it's not comfortable, and the lack of comfort's gonna, I'm not falling for that. And I'm certainly not falling for the too much money bit. Like, I roll my eyes so hard at that, because that is one of the main excuses I hear when it comes to how people, how executive producers and producers skimp out on, or directors even skimp out on the Black character stories, and try to make it seem like it's about the money, when it's like, when we know what it really is, especially when it comes to a character like Mike Hanlon, because I'm just not going for it. I'm not going for it, especially knowing that the bird scene probably would have blew all the other scenes out the water, and that connection would have been really, really cool. So whatever. I already went into this, but I also think another reason why they went this route with Mike in the films versus the book is because of his loving home life. I actually tweeted this and I was like, God forbid a Black child have a loving family and a loving home, right? And it's just so wild to me. They did not, like, I don't know, even the part in the film where he's like, I'm not my dad, okay? What? Like, Mike would have never spoken about his father like that. And Leroy not even there. So this overbearing grandfather who's forcing him to try to kill an innocent animal this is not it. This is not the loving home that Mike grew up in. I am not a fan. And to make matters worse, like, that's all that you get of his home life. Same thing with Stanley. I don't like how we don't really go into Stan's whole thing, because But to be fair, he doesn't have like actually no, he does have a big moment. They don't show that big moment. They only show the creepy lady in the painting. But Stan is another one. It's crazy. Oh my God. Stephen King literally, I think, in the novel catered to his two characters that are most likely to be discriminated against in the entire group. Like, he really gave them some beautiful first time experiences with it. Like Stan's story, because I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to do it justice by explaining it, but his is one of the most beautifully written experiences too. And we'll explain further why he actually unalives himself, because the films do this whole thing where they make it seem like it was intentional. It was not intentional. It really was simply because he was that afraid. He was that afraid. And it was because he was offended by the very existence of this thing. Because in his mind, his logical mind, he reminds me of a Virgo. In his logical mind, he's like, this is not supposed to exist. And now that it does, he doesn't know what to do. And it's this whole thing. But ironically enough, he is the only one who actually understands what to do without really knowing what to do, by yelling out a bunch of bird names at it. And it kind of just throws it off guard. You see this in part 2 when they're, humiliating it and bringing it down to size by yelling. It's basically being like, I'm not afraid of you, because it feeds off of fear. So when Stan does that, it really does save his life. And it's just so unfortunate. R.I.P. Stan. R.I.P. A part of me was kind of happy how they did that, though, in the films. I want so badly to believe that there was a reasoning for his death. But like in the novel, there is a reason, but it's not. It has nothing to do with them all coming together and it coming full circle. And like, no. Him having that loving home life just goes against the stereotypes, especially because this novel was written in the 80s. So I think Stephen King intentionally did that during the crack era and all of that. I think he intentionally wanted to show a Black household where it is loving, where there is love there, because we do have, like, not everybody was raised in crack epidemic trauma. There's still, just like any other community, there's still love in the community. There's still love and family. And for them to take that away from him in the films was just so unnecessary and gross. It's just like, if all the kids can't have love, neither can Mike. And it's just like, well, taking away that love kind of ruins his part in staying behind in Derry. Like, it would make sense for him to stay behind, not only because he knows he needs to remember, because they will forget as they leave the town, but because he actually likes his family and he likes his upbringing. And, he goes to college in the novel. He becomes a librarian in the novel, like a major librarian, like the head one, I think. So even though he doesn't become rich and famous like all the other ones, which I was looking at sideways when I was reading it in high school, I was like, really, out of everybody else, he's the only one? But it works. It works in the film. It makes sense if you really think about it. You think about how his home life was the best. And he is the true historian. So he's staying behind, figuring out as much as he can in these 27 years so they can get rid of this thing. And I think something else I wrote in my notes is, I said, I'll just read it outright. I said, the laziness with which non-Black audience members fall into when dissecting Black characters. I think what I meant by this, because, I be going in when I write down, but then sometimes I forget what my actual point was. I think what I meant by that was, I may have said this earlier, but I really, really don't appreciate how easy and off the hook these new writers and directors and producers are getting off when it comes to Black characters. With Mike in particular, I noticed while watching it, Welcome to Derry, that anytime a theory was done about Lily possibly being Beverly's mother, there was like such pushback from people, and like people were genuinely being angry. That doesn't happen in the novel. That doesn't happen in the book. I don't see any of that vitriol or any of that anger when it comes to Mike Hanlon's character. Okay? Because everything about this is not even how it happens. None of it. Not a single thing. None of it makes any real sense in regards to the novel. But nobody is as upset about it, which is why I added the laziness. Like, when people talk about that, they're just all like, oh, well, it wasn't that important. It wasn't that necessary, or they couldn't afford it, and all of the BS excuses when it comes to these Black characters. But total anger at the very possibility that Beverly's mother might be Lily Bainbridge. It's just like, I noticed that. I pick up on that. And it's because I think that the average individual really does view our characters and our stories as like, it's playing second fiddle to everything else. It's not important to them. It's just background noise. And I'm like, no, he is a crucial character. He is the character that gives them the chud, I think it says chud ritual so that they can get rid of this thing. So I'm just not going for it. And I would love if those who read the novel were just as upset about this as I am. I know that there are a few that I've seen, some critics who are like, that doesn't really happen. But I'm noticing more and more critics talk about the Hanlons as though everything that was done in the films is accurate. So many people keep saying, because, in the novel, Will dies in the fire. No, he does not. Will does not die in the fire. He doesn't. He literally survives. He survives to the very end. He's with Mike until Mike is an adult. I need to put that out there so that people can watch this show and be detached from it. Kind of like me. Like, I'm enjoying it, but I enjoyed it in a very detached manner because everybody's like, oh, it's so sad knowing what's going to happen to Will in the future. And I'm like, but that doesn't happen to Will in the future. Like, he actually survives. And like this unnecessary pain of Mike becoming an orphan when he was never an orphan. And I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I'm pretty sure I meant something else by that last note because the actual last note and, oh wait, no, I did address that. I'm so sorry. Like when I write my notes, it really is like a dumpster fire. I'm all over the place. And I write in cursive too, so that ain't helping. Um, but that's all I had to say. Like I said, I really did enjoy Welcome to Derry, and I'm totally watching the rest of this. I am gonna watch season 2. Hope they do that correctly. And I'm certainly watching the 1908 version because of the creepiness of it. I think that if they do it right, that will be great. But I really, if anybody who is on the team, post production team for It Welcome to Derry, baby, please stop relying on CGI. Not only can you save money and hire other people who will make these scenes actually scary and will actually get even more views, which is what you're hoping for, right? You're trying to get more bang for your buck. Baby, stop using CGI. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. It's not as vibrant, and the lack of vibrancy makes it less scary. There is nothing like that whole scene with the winter fire and the winter fire and the fog with them being on that ice and single file. Like I'm telling you, that could have really been some creepy esque ish, and it didn't deliver. It didn't deliver for me. The theory of it all, the whole thought process behind it, like that did deliver, but it didn't deliver. Like I'm just not impressed with the CGI. Stop using it. It's not good. It's not good. So that is all I have for right now. I hope you guys enjoyed my little rant. I hope I provided some new information to you if you are an individual who does not want to read this novel, because there are some scenes in this novel that are very unnecessary and very inappropriate, which is why I keep reiterating that this is not a children's story. It's not a children's book. If you can get past all of that, you should give the novel a chance. But I love it, Stephen King's It. And I hope that more and more people really, start to invest in the truth behind the lore. Anyway, that is all I have to say for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you actually made it all the way to the end, please like, comment, and subscribe. But especially comment, because that's really what I want over here. I really want to hear you guys' opinions, and I want to know what you think about all of this. Are you bothered by the changes like I am? Because, not every single Black person probably cares. I do. But yeah, comment about that. Comment on what you liked and didn't like about the show, what you liked and didn't like about the films even. I think that's where we're going to wrap this up. Thanks again, and I will see you in my next video. Peace out. Bye, bye, bye.